I woke up to the steady beeping of machines, my body heavy, uncooperative. But it wasn't the sterile scent of the hospital room or the cold grip of paralysis that stole my breath. It was the sound of my son's voice, sharp and desperate. "It's mine. I've put in the work. She's barely here anymore." The words hit me like a slap. She's barely here anymore. After everything, after raising him, loving him, the man I trusted, the one I thought would stand by me, he was already dividing up what was mine. My house, my home. I wasn't dead yet, but they were already planning my funeral. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor is steady, but the silence around Eleanor feels deafening. She can feel the sterile chill of the rehab ward, the cold pressure of the thin, stiff sheets beneath her. The faint scent of antiseptic clings to the air, and then beneath it all, the sound, voices harsh and angry, cutting through the haze of her half-conscious state. It's Mark and Lydia. "They'll never give it to you. You know that, don't you?" Mark's voice is sharp, like broken glass. Eleanor doesn't have to open her eyes to know he's standing near her bed, pacing like a caged animal. "We deserve it now, Mark," Lydia snaps back, her voice high-pitched with entitlement. "I've put up with her for long enough. All those years." The words are thin, venomous, laden with years of pent-up frustration. She's had enough. The fight is familiar. Eleanor has heard them argue over the family house for years, like two sharks circling the same carcass. But this time, the bitterness in Lydia's voice isn't just about property. It's about something deeper, something Eleanor can't quite place, but it sits heavy in her chest. Her body feels like a stone, unresponsive, half paralyzed. But her mind is awake, too awake. Her heart thrashes against her ribs as she listens, paralyzed not just in body but in spirit. The blanketed paralysis isn't just physical, it's emotional. And in the suffocating silence between their words, she feels the raw pulse of a long, simmering rage, hardening her like steel. "I'm not letting you walk away with everything, Lydia," Mark spits, his voice trembling with something that feels like fear. Eleanor can hear him moving closer, his shoes tapping lightly against the floor. Lydia's sharp laugh cuts through. "You really think anyone's gonna listen to you? You've barely been around. I'm the one who took care of her, the one who sacrificed, while you just—" She breaks off, and Eleanor can hear the sound of something heavy hitting the metal frame of her bed. The noise snaps Eleanor's awareness into focus. A gasp escapes her lips before she can stop it, loud enough that both of them stop in their tracks. For the briefest of moments, everything goes still. Her chest tightens, and the air is thick in her lungs. She doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't want to listen to their ugly, greedy words. They're not speaking of family anymore. They're speaking of something cold, calculating. The pain she feels isn't just from her body, it's the shock of betrayal. The kind that settles into your skin, tightens your muscles, makes you feel like you'll never take a full breath again. She hadn't known the depths of their resentment, not really. But now, in the hollow space between her breaths, it comes into sharp relief. This is it. "You didn't deserve it," she wants to say, but the words are lost. Her throat is a prison, and her hands remain clenched in a fist beneath the blanket. Nurse Dana enters then, her white uniform as clinical as her expression. Eleanor hears the soft scrape of her shoes against the floor, the delicate rustle of her notes. She stops at the foot of the bed, her gaze flicking between the two at her side. The air between them is thick with tension, a split second of rawness before she speaks. "Is everything all right here?" Nurse Dana's voice is clipped, her tone firm. There's a hint of judgment there, a quiet disapproval that stirs something in Eleanor's chest. Lydia doesn't even flinch. "Just family business," she mutters, eyes narrowing as she turns toward the nurse. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Dana isn't looking at Lydia. Her eyes fall to Eleanor, lying still in the bed. Eleanor feels the weight of the nurse's gaze, something sharp, knowing. It cuts through the fog of confusion, and Eleanor doesn't need to see her face to feel the disgust in the way she holds herself. The nurse knows. She sees it all, sees the ugliness beneath their attempts to mask it. The tension in the room shifts, but Eleanor's body remains frozen. Her thoughts are frenzied, scattered. Mark's voice is distant, fading into the background, but Lydia's words still linger in the air. We deserve it now. No, Eleanor thinks. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve any of it. Her grip tightens on the blanket beneath her fingers, the fabric digging into her skin. Her heart pounds in her chest, louder than the beeping of the machine. Her fingers twitch. Eleanor blinks, slowly. The movement is small, barely noticeable, but it's enough. And in the silent space that follows, she feels something shift within her, a spark of clarity amidst the haze of confusion. The sound of the door clicking shut behind Nurse Dana barely registers as Eleanor pulls herself into a fragile, quiet resolve. She's not done. Not yet. Not by a long shot. It's time to wake up. The days blend together, a haze of sterile whites and muted blues, the dull drone of machines a constant background noise. Eleanor stays still, too still. The ache in her body is a distant thing, swallowed by the fog of painkillers and the slow, deliberate ticking of time. She plays the part of the broken woman, the one who can barely move, barely speak. She lets her body betray her, its weakness and armor that shields her from the world outside. But inside, beneath the surface, Eleanor is watching. She's always watching. Mark visits less and less, as though her fragility has become an inconvenience to him. His footsteps in the hall sound louder now, quick and impatient. When he enters the room, he barely acknowledges her, only offering a clipped, "How's it going today?" before moving to the chair by the window. His visits are never for her. They're for the house. "How's the paperwork coming?" he asks, his voice strained, a cold edge of desperation undercutting the detachment. "The deed. Has the lawyer sent it yet?" His words hang in the sterile air. Lydia's influence is like a shadow, always lingering behind his questions, pushing him, pulling him toward the inevitable endgame they've already set in motion. He rarely makes eye contact with Eleanor, as if her presence has become a nuisance, something to endure, not something to engage with. Lydia, though, isn't so silent. She storms in a few hours later, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. The moment she enters, she locks eyes with Eleanor, and the coldness between them is palpable. Eleanor doesn't flinch. She doesn't move. "Well," Lydia demands, her voice sharp, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. "The deed should be ours already, Mark. What's the delay?" Mark looks up from his phone, irritated, but there's a trace of guilt in his eyes, something Eleanor hadn't seen before. "I'm doing what I can," he mutters, his hand running through his hair in frustration. "It's not like I can just snap my fingers and—" "I don't care about your excuses," Lydia interrupts, her voice rising. "She's not getting better, not really. It's ours, now, not later. We're losing time." The words are like daggers, each one piercing a little deeper into Eleanor's chest, but she remains still. She's learning how to breathe through the discomfort, how to sink beneath it without letting it consume her. Their greed is a familiar thing now, like the taste of old bitterness. She swallows it, each moment growing heavier. But then, in the quiet space of the room, something shifts. Nurse Dana steps in, her presence a quiet contrast to the storm Lydia is stirring up. Dana's eyes flicker toward Eleanor, then back to Lydia and Mark, but she doesn't say anything immediately. She simply watches. "Is everything all right?" Nurse Dana asks, her voice calm, steady. Lydia stiffens but doesn't respond. Mark shifts in his seat, visibly irritated at the interruption, but Nurse Dana isn't deterred. With an almost imperceptible glance toward Eleanor, she lowers her voice, the words soft but unmistakable. "You're sharper than they think, Eleanor. Don't let them get too comfortable." The words land like a spark in the quiet dark of Eleanor's mind. Shaper than they think. She takes them in, lets them sink in slowly. It's a warning, but it's also an invitation. She nods slightly, barely enough to be noticed, but it's enough. Enough to begin something new. The conversation dies down as Nurse Dana leaves, but Eleanor doesn't listen to the fading footsteps. She's focused inward, feeling the slow, steady build of resolve beneath the paralysis. Then, a day later, Sarah arrives. Sarah's presence is a comfort. Her warm smile, her soft voice, Eleanor's first taste of human connection in what feels like ages. She sits beside the bed, her hand gently resting on Eleanor's. For a moment, there is no house, no deeds, no lies. There's just Sarah, her friend. I'm sorry this happened to you, Sarah says, her voice trembling slightly. I know how much the house meant to you. You're strong, Eleanor. I know you can get through this. I'm here for you. Eleanor squeezes Sarah's hand gently, the motion slow but deliberate. She doesn't speak. The words are still trapped in her throat, buried under layers of pain and frustration. But Sarah's presence, her belief in her, stirs something deep within Eleanor, something buried beneath the wreckage. Thank you, Eleanor finally manages, the words soft but filled with weight. Sarah's smile is full of warmth. Whatever happens, you're not alone, Eleanor. You'll get through this. You're stronger than you think. It's a small thing, a simple reassurance, but it's enough to crack the surface of Eleanor's silence. The embers of her resolve burn a little brighter now. Later, when Sarah leaves, Eleanor asks for Tom. Her voice is barely a whisper, but it's enough. The request is clear, and Nurse Dana, who has been hovering just out of earshot, nods without hesitation. Tom will come tomorrow, she says quietly, her eyes lingering on Eleanor's face for just a moment. You're not forgotten, Eleanor. Don't forget that. The door clicks shut behind her, and Eleanor is left in the stillness of the room. A small plan begins to take shape in her mind, each piece falling into place. The house, Mark, Lydia, the lies. She may be weak for now, but she won't stay this way. The dim light of late afternoon filters through the blinds, casting thin stripes across Eleanor's hospital room. She can hear the faint hum of the machines around her, their steady pulse a constant reminder of her fragility. But today, there's a sense of expectation in the air, something sharper. The door opens with a soft click, and Eleanor's gaze lifts from the bed, her fingers twitching beneath the blanket. Tom enters, his presence like a quiet anchor in the chaos that has become her life. He's always been her ally, always been the one who saw through the thin veils people tried to put over their intentions. He approaches her slowly, his eyes scanning the room before resting on her face. For a brief moment, they simply look at each other. No words, just understanding. Then his voice breaks the silence, low and steady. You wanted to talk? Eleanor nods. The movement slight, but intentional. She gestures for him to sit beside her. He pulls the chair closer, settling in, his posture attentive but not overbearing. For a moment, the world outside this sterile room falls away. I overheard something, Eleanor says quietly, her voice a whisper of the storm that rages beneath the surface. Mark and Lydia. She swallows, trying to steady herself. But the memory of their words stings. They're planning to take the house. It's already in motion. Tom's expression hardens. He leans in slightly, his eyes narrowing. What exactly did you hear? Eleanor repeats the conversation she'd overheard, her words careful but precise. Mark's desperation, Lydia's sharpness, the looming presence of their greed. How they'd spoken about the house like it was already theirs. How they were willing to push her to sign anything, to make it official. They think I'm too weak to understand, Eleanor adds, her voice thick with a mix of anger and disbelief. They're already talking about the deed. The deed, Tom, like it's just a formality. Tom's jaw clenches, his fists subtly tightening at his sides. But he doesn't let the anger show, not yet. He's a strategist, not a man of rash decisions. If they try to transfer the deed, he says after a beat, his tone low but firm, we'll trap them. We'll make sure everything is documented. You're not signing anything, not a damn thing. I'll help you. Eleanor looks up at him, her eyes a mix of relief and something sharper, darker. She wants this fight, this battle she's been too paralyzed to take part in. The pieces are starting to fall into place, and the idea of finally doing something, taking action, feels like a cold rush of air after a long, suffocating silence. I'm in, she says simply, her voice clearer now. But they can't know I'm on to them. I need them to think I'm confused, that I'm still too weak to understand. I'll play along. Tom nods, his eyes scanning her face as though trying to gauge if she's truly ready for what's coming. He trusts her, but there's a wariness in his gaze, a knowledge that things are about to escalate quickly. Good, he says quietly. I'll help you make sure they step too far. If you can get them to pressure you, we'll use it against them. I'll set things up, get everything on record. Eleanor feels the familiar buzz of adrenaline coursing through her veins. a stark contrast to the numbness that's held her captive for so long. She wants them to push her. She wants them to slip up. The conversation shifts as the door to the room opens again, and Lydia walks in, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. She doesn't even glance at Tom, her eyes zeroing in on Eleanor. Eleanor feels a flicker of unease in her chest, but she quickly masks it, letting her body slump further into the bed as though the effort of even looking at Lydia is too much. Her eyes drift closed for a moment, feigning exhaustion, but she's listening. She's always listening. Lydia's voice is a harsh whisper, directed at Eleanor but for Tom's benefit. "You know, Eleanor," she begins, her tone sickeningly sweet. "If you'd just sign the papers, all of this can go away. All the stress, all the pain. We'd handle everything. You'd be taken care of." Eleanor forces herself to remain still, not letting the anger build in her chest. She blinks slowly, acting as though the words have no effect on her. She barely manages a weak, confused nod. "Sign what?" Eleanor asks in a voice so soft it's almost a breath. "I don't understand." Lydia's smile tightens, her patience wearing thin. "You'll understand soon enough," she says, her voice oozing with fake concern. "Don't worry, we'll explain everything when you're feeling better." Tom shifts slightly in his chair, but he doesn't intervene. He's waiting, watching. He knows the game they're playing. The door clicks open again, and Sarah enters, her face soft but determined. Lydia's gaze flickers toward her with obvious annoyance, but Sarah ignores her, coming to Eleanor's side. "Everything okay?" Sarah asks gently, her hand brushing Eleanor's arm in reassurance. Eleanor gives her a weak smile, but it's enough to signal Sarah to move into action. Later that evening, Sarah slips away, taking copies of all the documents regarding the house, including the deed, and locks them safely in her personal safe. Eleanor doesn't ask questions. She trusts Sarah to do what's needed. As the night settles in, Eleanor is alone again, the room dark and quiet. She can feel the pressure building, the walls closing in as she prepares for the next move. She knows the game has begun. And this time, she's ready. The glow of the computer screen casts a pale light over Tom's face as he pores over the property records. The room around him is suffocatingly quiet, save for the click of his mouse and the occasional rustle of paper. Eleanor sits across from him, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, her eyes darting nervously to the screen as though she can force the truth to appear faster. She's already seen it once, but seeing it again, confirmed in black and white, is like being struck by a fist. The fraudulent transfer attempt. The deed, her deed, already altered, forged, ready to be passed off as a legitimate transaction. The documents look official, neat, but the signatures? They're wrong. The dates are wrong. And worst of all, the witnesses? They don't exist. Eleanor's breath catches in her throat. For a moment, the room spins, her head swimming with disbelief. How could they? How could they sink this low? But the horror fades quickly, replaced by a chilling resolve. Her family, Mark, Lydia, have underestimated her. She's been silent, she's been still, but she's not stupid. This betrayal, this attempt to rob her of everything, will be their undoing. Tom doesn't look up from the screen, his fingers tapping lightly against the keyboard. His expression is neutral, but there's a fire in his eyes. They didn't just try to take it, Eleanor. They thought they could get away with it. If we act fast, we can turn this around. Eleanor nods, her voice low but steady. "I'm with you. We make them regret this." Tom finally looks at her, his gaze lingering for a moment, measuring her. "I've got to get someone else involved. Nurse Dana. She's been here the whole time. She can testify that no signing ever took place." Eleanor's lips tremble slightly. She's afraid of what she's about to ask, but she knows it's necessary. "Can we trust her?" Tom's eyes flicker with a knowing look. "I've spoken with her already. She's disgusted by what they're trying to do. She'll testify." Eleanor exhales slowly, the weight of her next steps pressing down on her chest. She's playing a dangerous game now. The stakes are higher than she ever imagined. As the door to her room opens, Eleanor straightens up, instinctively masking her emotions. Mark enters, as expected, with that thin, patronizing smile of his that barely hides his impatience. He's been playing the part of the concerned brother, but Eleanor knows better. "You look better," Mark says, his voice smooth, too smooth, as though he's rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror. He doesn't ask her how she's feeling. He doesn't care. Not really. He's here for one reason, and it's not to check on her health. Eleanor offers him a faint, wavering smile, the image of weakness she's cultivated. "Thanks," she murmurs, playing the part to perfection. Mark sits down in the chair beside her bed, the same distance he's always kept, like she's a distant problem to him. "You'll be signing the papers soon, won't you? We've already taken care of everything on our end. Just a few formalities left." Eleanor can feel the malice in his words, the undertone of pressure. He's trying to rush her, trying to manipulate her into doing it now while she's still weak, still helpless, but she doesn't give him an inch. "Sign papers," she repeats, feigning confusion, letting the words fall from her lips like a question. "I don't think I understand." Mark leans forward, a flash of frustration crossing his face before he quickly masks it. "Don't worry about the details. It's all taken care of. You'll feel better once it's done." But as he speaks, Eleanor watches him carefully. There's a slight, almost imperceptible slip, an out-of-place glance toward the door, a shift in his posture. He's nervous, and it's clear. He's not nearly as calm as he pretends to be. After a long pause, he stands, brushing a hand through his hair. "We'll be in touch. Just rest up." He exits the room with a quick, clipped step, the door closing softly behind him. Eleanor exhales deeply, her body relaxing only slightly as she turns to Tom. "We play the long game, Tom. No more rushing. Let them make the first mistake. And when they do, when they slip up, we'll make them wish they never started this." Tom doesn't hesitate. He's already plotting the next move in his head. "We'll need backup witnesses," he says, his voice steady, calculating. "If we get enough people involved, it's game over for them." Eleanor's eyes glint with determination. Sarah's already on it. The evening fades into night, but Eleanor's resolve only grows stronger. She knows this game isn't over, not by a long shot. And when the time comes to turn the tables on Mark and Lydia, she'll be ready. The first whisper comes over the fence, murmured between two neighbors in the backyard next door. Eleanor hears it faintly, the sound of idle chatter carried on the summer wind as she watches the trees sway just outside her window. It's a soft, almost insignificant sound, but it lingers. "Did you hear?" one of them says, her voice lowering just enough for Eleanor to catch the words. "Mark and Lydia want the house. They've already made a deal behind her back." The second voice is quieter, cautious. "Is that true? After everything?" "I thought she was still." The first woman cuts her off, the words sharp and sure. "They're pushing her out. Been planning it for months. I don't know if Eleanor knows what they're up to, but they're working fast." Eleanor's fingers twitch at her side. She doesn't make a sound, doesn't move. She knows she's not supposed to hear this, but she does anyway. The betrayal in her family's voice is a bitter taste in the air, and the more she hears, the more it stokes the fire inside her. Her body is still bound by weakness, but her mind is sharp, and it's working, plotting, always plotting. The whispers spread quickly through the town like a wildfire. A few hours later, she hears another conversation, this one in the waiting room. Two women from the local church are sitting just outside her door, their voices soft but audible. "Well, it's no surprise, is it? I mean, we all know Mark and Lydia have wanted that house for years," one says, clucking her tongue. "But to go this far? And now poor Eleanor's lying in that bed, none the wiser. They're not even pretending to care about her anymore." The other woman sighs. "I don't like it. Something's not right about this whole thing. No one's seen them act like this before." "I heard Sarah's been looking into it," the first woman responds, her voice dropping even lower. "Maybe she'll be the one to stop them." Eleanor's heart gives a little jolt at the mention of Sarah, her friend, the only person still on her side, the one who hasn't abandoned her, who hasn't fallen for the manipulations. She thinks of Sarah's quiet determination, her presence as a shield against the storm. The rumors twist and turn as they spread. It's no longer just about the house. Now it's about what Mark and Lydia are willing to do to take it. The whispers get darker, more speculative. "They're ruthless," Eleanor hears one man say to another. "Eleanor's been a pawn for too long. They've already got their hooks in deep." Sarah isn't quiet about her defense of Eleanor. She steps into the local diner one afternoon where the town congregates and doesn't hesitate to speak her mind. "They're lying," she says, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of everyone in the room. "You've all seen it. Eleanor's not the weak woman they want you to believe she is. She's stronger than any of them. And I'll stand by her through this." The chatter dies down for a moment, and then the room breaks into murmurs. The tension thick in the air. Sarah's words carry weight. They always do. People listen when she speaks, and her unwavering support of Eleanor causes others to pause and reconsider the narrative they've been hearing. Some of them start to nod, others shift uncomfortably. The divide between truth and manipulation has never felt sharper. Lydia, always one to wield her scorn like a weapon, hears the rumors too. She's furious, her pride wounded. As she strides into the local store, she overhears a group of women talking, their heads lowered in hushed conversation. "I heard Sarah saying Eleanor's tougher than she looks," one woman whispers, eyes wide with interest. "It's about time someone stood up to Mark and Lydia." Lydia scoffs, the sound loud enough to break through the conversation. "Small-town minds," she mutters, rolling her eyes. "They wouldn't know the truth if it slapped them across the face. Let them gossip. It doesn't change a thing." But Lydia's voice is tight, thin with barely contained frustration. The walls she's built around her own manipulations are beginning to crack. Back at the hospital, Eleanor smiles faintly to herself as she hears the whispers from the hallway outside. The townsfolk, those who used to watch her with pity, are starting to see through the lies. They're calling her tough as nails, the words a balm for her soul. A slow but sure confirmation that she's not forgotten. She's not the victim in this story. She's the one who'll make them pay for underestimating her. Tom is there later that evening, his mind still focused on the task ahead. He's been quietly gathering evidence, compiling everything into a file so thick it feels heavy with the weight of what's at stake. "We're almost there," he says as he scans the papers in front of him. "One more push, and we'll have them. They won't even see it coming." Eleanor leans back in her bed. Her body still weak, but her mind sharp as ever. She can feel the tide turning. The walls around Mark and Lydia are starting to close in. They're getting sloppy. Their desperation is showing, and it's only a matter of time before it all comes crashing down. And when it does, Eleanor will be there, standing tall. The whispers of the town, her silent allies in this war she's about to win. The envelope arrives late in the afternoon, its stiff white edges slicing through the air like a warning. It's plain, ordinary, and yet it carries the weight of everything Eleanor has been dreading. She sits in her hospital room, her eyes locked on the door as it opens with the softest of clicks. Nurse Dana steps in, holding the envelope in one hand. She doesn't say a word as she passes it to Eleanor, her expression unreadable. Eleanor takes it from her, the paper cool against her fingers. The moment the envelope touches her hands, her body tenses. She doesn't need to open it to know what it is. Mark's name is already printed across the top. It's official. He's made his move. She tears it open slowly, each rip of paper a little more deliberate than the last. The words inside are concise, clinical. He's filed for control of the house. He wants full ownership, citing her inability to manage her affairs due to her health. It's clean, precise, and utterly heartless. Her chest tightens, but she doesn't react outwardly. She doesn't show fear. She doesn't show anger. She doesn't show anything. She simply reads the papers again, her eyes tracing the cold legal jargon, the manipulative phrases. They know they have the upper hand, at least for now. She folds the papers neatly, setting them beside her, and leans back in her bed. Her mind moves with quiet precision, already calculating their next steps. The battle has only just begun, and Mark has underestimated her once again. A soft knock on the door breaks her concentration. Sarah enters, her face tight with concern. "I heard," Sarah says quietly, sitting beside the bed. Her voice cracks slightly as she glances at the court papers on the table. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. This is it, isn't it? They're going to take it from you." Eleanor turns her head to Sarah, giving her a small, almost imperceptible smile. "It's just a paper, Sarah. It doesn't mean anything yet." But Sarah doesn't share her calm. She places a hand on Eleanor's arm, squeezing it gently. "You're not alone in this. I'll be here every step of the way. But you, You're going to need to fight. And it won't be easy. Eleanor's heart aches at the genuine concern in Sarah's voice. It's a fight Sarah doesn't want her to have to face. But Eleanor knows what's at stake now. She knows what Mark and Lydia are capable of. The fight may be long and messy, but it's one Eleanor will win. I'm ready, Eleanor says, her voice steady, betraying none of the fear she feels deep inside. As if on cue, Tom enters the room. His presence is a steady anchor, a reassurance in the storm that's about to break. He looks down at the papers for a long moment before meeting Eleanor's gaze. They're playing the game, Eleanor, he says, his voice calm but firm. But we're ahead of them. They don't know what's coming next. And they won't until it's too late. Eleanor nods, feeling the weight of his words sink in. They're not just playing to win. They're playing to destroy the lies Mark and Lydia have been spinning for months. The battle won't be over quickly, but it's not their fight to lose. Just as Tom is about to leave, Lydia struts in, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum floor, the sound a reminder of her false confidence. She's wearing a new coat, a bright red one, and Eleanor notices the brand. The same one she's seen advertised in expensive magazines. The coat's price tag could have paid for months of bills, and yet Lydia wears it like a trophy she's earned with her expectations of what's coming next. Well, Eleanor, Lydia says with a wide, taunting smile, I see you've gotten your court papers. But don't worry, everything's going to be fine. The house will finally be in good hands. Mark's hands. Our hands. Her eyes flicker to the red coat, and a thin smile plays at the corners of Eleanor's mouth. She says nothing. There's no need to respond to Lydia's games. The cold smugness of Lydia's words is a familiar sting, but it's not a weapon Eleanor will ever fear again. I'm sure you're looking forward to your inheritance, Eleanor says softly, her voice measured. It'll come soon enough, won't it? Lydia doesn't respond right away. For a moment, there's a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, just the briefest second of hesitation. She doesn't like being reminded that the house isn't hers yet. The inheritance isn't guaranteed, and Eleanor can feel it, the cracks in Lydia's armor, the way the foundations of her confidence are starting to buckle under the pressure. But Lydia doesn't let it show. She straightens her shoulders and forces a smile, but it's thinner than usual. You'll see, she says, her voice strained. Everything's moving exactly as planned. As Lydia walks out, Eleanor watches her, the silence hanging heavy in the room. Sarah gives Eleanor's arm a final reassuring squeeze. Before slipping out to handle other matters, Eleanor leans back in her bed, the coolness of the air pressing in on her. She allows herself one brief moment of satisfaction, a smile that only she can see. The game is on, and now, finally, Mark and Lydia are in for a surprise. It's her turn now. The rehab center smells of antiseptic and hard determination. The floors shine with an unnatural polish, and the air is thin with the sharp sting of bleach. Eleanor feels the weight of it all as she forces herself to stand, gripping the parallel bars in front of her, her legs shaking beneath her. The physical pain is sharp, biting, but it's nothing compared to the quiet fire that's burning inside her. She's moving inch by inch, step by grueling step. Nice and steady, Eleanor, Nurse Dana says from behind her, her voice soft but encouraging. One more step. You've got this. Eleanor grits her teeth, feeling her muscles stretch and protest. She doesn't respond, but the sweat beading on her brow is testament enough. Every movement feels like a mountain, but it's the only way forward. She's not just regaining mobility, she's regaining control. Her body may have betrayed her, but her mind never will. Dana watches closely, a quiet pride in her eyes. There's something unspoken between them, a bond forged in the quiet moments when no one else is around. Nurse Dana isn't just a caregiver, she's a quiet ally, an unexpected support in the sea of people who either pity her or wish her gone. Another step, then another. The pain shoots up her leg like a bolt of lightning, but Eleanor doesn't stop. She can feel her resolve hardening. Finally, with a shaky exhale, she lets go of the bars and takes a step away from them. She's standing. Really standing, a small yet monumental victory. Well done, Dana says, her voice a soft approval. You're making incredible progress. Eleanor smiles faintly, sweat still dripping from her forehead. Thanks, she whispers. But in her mind, the victory is sweeter than anything else. She's not just reclaiming her body. She's reclaiming everything that was taken from her. The house, the fight, the power. Mark visits only once, just a few days later. His footsteps echo down the sterile hallway. The sound of his heels, a grim reminder of his presence. He doesn't look at her like a sister. No, this is a transaction for him. A business deal. Nothing more. When he enters, his eyes are immediately on the papers she knows he's here for. "Eleanor," he says, his voice clipped and impatient, "I just need the final paperwork. We can't move forward until you sign it." His eyes flit over her, not with concern or care, but with the faintest trace of disdain. He doesn't see her as a person. He sees her as an obstacle to overcome. Eleanor's fingers tighten on the blanket beneath her as she forces a weak, confused smile. She doesn't rise to meet him. She stays exactly where she is, leaning back against the bed as if she's too fragile to move. I don't know what you mean," she says softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm not sure what paperwork you need, Mark." Mark's patience thins as he lets out an audible sigh. "You know exactly what I mean. The house, Eleanor, the deed. We need it signed so we can take care of everything. I've been patient with you." Eleanor lets her head drop, as though overwhelmed, and she glances up through her lashes, meeting his gaze with just enough vulnerability to make him feel in control. But underneath it all, her mind is sharp, calculating. She's playing the game, letting him think he has the upper hand, even though she's the one pulling the strings. I'll think about it," she murmurs, her voice soft, barely audible. She smiles faintly, the image of weakness she's so carefully cultivated. "But I'm so tired. Maybe later." Mark doesn't wait for a response. He stands, irritation flashing across his face. "Fine, later," he snaps. "We'll discuss it soon." As he walks out, Eleanor lets the smile fade, her chest tightening with the weight of the moment. She doesn't need to sign anything, not yet, not until it's on her terms. Later that afternoon, Sarah arrives, her expression tight but warm with quiet determination. She pulls a chair beside the bed, setting a bag down beside her. "You're doing well," Sarah says softly, taking Eleanor's hand in hers. "I heard you took some steps today. That's huge, Eleanor. I'm proud of you." Eleanor smiles faintly, the flicker of pride in her eyes enough to speak volumes. "Thanks, Sarah. It's hard, but I'm getting there, one step at a time." But Sarah doesn't smile back. Instead, her face grows serious as she lowers her voice. "The community, Eleanor, they're talking. They're starting to see through Mark and Lydia. They're asking questions." Eleanor's brow furrows slightly. "What are they saying?" "They're starting to see you as the strong one," Sarah says, a note of admiration creeping into her voice. "They're calling you tough as nails. The sympathy is growing, Eleanor. The whole town is starting to wake up to what's going on." Eleanor's heart swells at the words. Sympathy isn't what she's after. No, she wants something deeper, something stronger than pity. But for now, this will do. It's the first ripple in a much bigger wave. "I'm glad," Eleanor says softly. "It'll make a difference. When the time comes." Later that evening, Eleanor sits in bed, a journal open in front of her. She writes, as she has every day since the first whisper of the fight began, documenting every step of this slow-burning war. The pain in her body doesn't matter as much anymore. What matters is the clarity she's finding with each word she writes. Each entry a little more precise, a little more deliberate. Every detail she can gather will become a weapon. "I will not be their victim," she writes in the journal, her pen pressing hard against the paper. "This fight is mine, and I will win." The courtroom is suffocating, a space steeped in formality and tension. The air is thick with expectation. The hum of whispered conversations filling the silence before the hearing begins. Eleanor sits in the witness box, her back straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her posture is a mask of composure, but underneath, her heart beats like a drum. Mark and Lydia sit across from her, their expressions cold, calculated. Mark's eyes never leave her, his gaze sharp as a blade, while Lydia leans forward with a well-practiced air of concern, as if playing the role of the worried sibling who's simply trying to help. The judge, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a neutral expression, looks over his glasses, scanning the room. "We will begin," he announces, his voice firm, almost clinical. Mr. Wilkins, you may present your case. Mark rises, his suit crisp, the sleeves of his shirt pulled tight against his wrists. He steps toward the judge with the confidence of a man who believes the battle is already won. We believe, Mark begins, his voice smooth and unyielding, that my sister Eleanor is no longer capable of managing her affairs. She's been incapacitated for some time now, and due to her condition, we are requesting full control of the house. She's confused, frail. She simply doesn't have the capacity to make these decisions. He glances at Eleanor, a look of feigned sympathy playing at the corners of his mouth. It's heartbreaking, but this is the reality we face. Eleanor's chest tightens at his words, the weight of the accusation hanging heavy in the air. They're painting her as weak, as helpless. It stings, but she doesn't react. She keeps her gaze steady, her hands perfectly still, the facade of fragility, her only armor. Objection, Tom's voice cuts through the air, firm and unyielding. He rises from his seat, his presence a stark contrast to Mark's false warmth. We have evidence that will directly contradict these claims. Eleanor is not only competent, but fully capable of defending her own interests. Tom steps forward, handing a stack of papers to the judge. The courtroom falls into a hushed silence as the judge reviews the documents. Your Honor, Tom continues, his voice steady and confident. We've obtained a copy of a forged deed, signed by Eleanor without her consent. This is a direct attempt to manipulate and steal from her. The signatures are fraudulent, and the witnesses are non-existent. We have proof that this is a forgery. A ripple of murmurs sweeps through the room. Mark and Lydia both stiffen, their eyes flashing with brief panic before they mask it. Tom's voice grows even more resolute. We also have testimony from Nurse Dana, who overheard an argument between Mark and Lydia, where they openly discussed taking control of the house behind Eleanor's back. This wasn't an act of caring for a vulnerable sibling. This was a premeditated scheme to take what wasn't theirs. The judge's brow furrows as he scans the forged documents. This is quite serious, he murmurs, his voice low but audible. Nurse Dana is called to the stand next. She walks up with her head held high, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the frantic energy of Mark and Lydia. She's been in this hospital long enough to know that truth is a weight, and it doesn't bend to anyone's will. Miss Donna, the judge says, his voice firm, please tell us what you overheard. Dinah's gaze flicks briefly to Eleanor before she speaks. I was passing by Eleanor's room one evening, she begins, her voice clear and composed, when I overheard an argument between Mark and Lydia. They were discussing how they planned to have Eleanor sign away the house. They spoke about it as though it was a mere formality, not a matter of her best interests. A murmur runs through the courtroom, and Lydia's face flushes with anger. Her gaze darts nervously around the room, but she doesn't speak. Her facade is starting to crack. Mark stands abruptly, his voice rising in frustration. This is absurd, he shouts. Nurse Dana, Please sit down, Mr. Wilkins, the judge interrupts, raising a hand to silence him. Let the witness speak. The judge's gaze moves from Mark to Lydia and then back to Nurse Dana, his expression unreadable. And did you witness any signs that Eleanor was, in fact, confused or incapable of understanding her surroundings? No, Dana replies firmly. Eleanor has always been lucid, aware, and coherent. She knows what's happening, and she has never shown signs of being unable to make decisions for herself. Lydia shifts uncomfortably in her seat, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her coat. She's trying to maintain her composure, but there's a faint tremor in her fingers, a crack in the icy exterior she's carefully constructed. The truth is squeezing through the cracks now, and Eleanor can see it. Lydia is starting to squirm. The judge leans back in his chair, raising an eyebrow as he takes in the inconsistencies in Mark and Lydia's story. It seems, he says, his voice a little more pointed now, that there are some discrepancies between your testimony and the evidence presented here. I will need to review this further, but I'm concerned about the nature of these claims. Eleanor doesn't show it, but a sense of victory begins to swell inside her. She can feel the tide shifting, the pressure on Mark and Lydia mounting. Their game is unraveling, and for the first time in months, she feels like she's in control. The judge looks down at the papers before him, his fingers tapping lightly against the wood. The silence in the room thickens, and Eleanor feels every moment stretch as if it might break into something more. The shadows of the courtroom are no longer just a backdrop. They're closing in. And Eleanor is ready. The courtroom is buzzing now. The tension is palpable, a humming electric charge in the air. Eleanor, sitting poised in the witness box, feels a sense of calm wash over her, even as the storm rages around her. The weight of her case has shifted. The pieces are falling into place. Tom stands at the front of the courtroom, his figure cutting through the murmur of the audience. He's about to reveal the next phase of the plan, something that could unravel the facade Lydia and Mark have carefully built. His eyes flick toward Eleanor briefly, giving her a reassuring nod. He knows the stakes. They all do. He turns back to face the judge, his voice steady but firm. Your Honor, we have more evidence, and this time it concerns Lydia Wilkins' financial history. A ripple runs through the room, the audience shifting with palpable interest. Lydia's eyes snap to Tom, her expression sharp with instant panic. Mark stiffens beside her, but he doesn't speak. Tom steps forward, handing over another set of documents, each page heavy with damning detail. Lydia Wilkins has a long history of financial mismanagement, Tom says, his voice cool. Evictions, unpaid loans, and multiple lawsuits for debts she's failed to repay. In fact, these documents clearly show she's been financially struggling for years. The courtroom grows silent as Tom presents evidence of Lydia's failed business ventures, overdue debts, and her multiple attempts to take out loans, all while accumulating a mountain of unpaid bills. The papers paint a picture of a woman who has been struggling to maintain any semblance of control over her life, a stark contrast to the well-groomed, wealthy image she's been projecting. Lydia shifts in her seat, her fingers tight on the arms of her chair. Her face flushes with a color that's less from shame than from the rage boiling beneath the surface. She isn't used to being exposed, especially not in public like this. Mark stands up, his voice cutting through the growing murmur in the room. Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant. My sister's financial history has nothing to do with the matter at hand. We are here to discuss Eleanor's ability to manage her affairs, not Lydia's personal finances. Tom doesn't flinch. With all due respect, Mr. Wilkins, it's very much relevant. The question of why Lydia and Mark are so intent on seizing the house isn't about concern for Eleanor. It's about Lydia's financial desperation and her motive to claim property she doesn't deserve. The judge raises an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the argument. He looks from Lydia to Mark, who is fidgeting with his cufflinks in an attempt to control the situation. The truth is out there now, and they can't pretend it's anything but. The media, ever hungry for a story, begins picking up on the case. The courtroom doors open for the press, and reporters begin swarming in. Cameras flash, microphones stretch forward. This isn't just a legal matter anymore. It's becoming something bigger, a spectacle. The headlines start shifting, and the term elder exploitation trial begins to make its rounds across the news outlets. The case is suddenly about much more than family betrayal. It's about a broader issue: abuse of the elderly, financial manipulation, and exploitation. Outside, people are beginning to take notice. Eleanor feels the weight of their gazes, but she doesn't shrink from it. She remains dignified, sitting still in her chair as the cameras zoom in on her calm, composed face. She isn't just fighting for herself now. She's fighting for all the others who've been taken advantage of in the shadows of their families. The whispers in the media grow louder, and the town starts to rally behind her. Sarah, standing by Eleanor's side outside the courtroom, smiles warmly at her as she watches the growing crowd. "You're winning hearts outside this courtroom, Eleanor," she says quietly, her voice filled with pride. "They see you now. You're not just the victim. They're starting to understand who's really been wronged here." Eleanor looks at Sarah, her heart swelling. It's more than just sympathy. It's solidarity. The truth is starting to spread. But Lydia isn't taking it well. She storms out of the courtroom, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floors. The press is already circling, eager to capture her reaction. She's furious, her mask slipping as she barks at the reporters, her voice laced with venom. "How dare you twist this into something it's not," Lydia shouts, her face twisted with rage. "You know nothing about my family, nothing about the truth." The reporters press closer, microphones thrusting into her face, their cameras flashing with eager intensity. Lydia's composure has completely shattered. She's losing control, and she knows it. But the more she fights back, the more the story shifts. The reporters swarm, and the questions become sharper. Every moment of her anger is captured, her desperation laid bare for everyone to see. As the flashes pop, Eleanor watches from the courtroom doorway. She's not surprised by Lydia's outburst, but she feels something stir within her. This is only the beginning. The truth is out now, and Lydia's reaction, her fury, is proof that it's hitting its mark. The gavel slams, echoing through the courtroom. The battle is far from over, but for the first time, Eleanor can see the end in sight. The shadows that once hovered over her are being pushed back, and she feels the weight of it all slowly, but surely, shift in her favor. The tension in the courtroom is thick enough to cut with a knife. The whispers from the gallery have barely subsided since the last revelation. Tom stands, his demeanor sharp and unwavering, his eyes briefly meeting Eleanor's as if to reassure her. She feels the calm before the storm, her body still, her hands steady. But her heart races in anticipation of what comes next. This is the moment. Your Honor, Tom begins, his voice carrying the weight of the evidence in his hand. We have more to present. Another forged document, directly linked to Lydia Wilkins. The courtroom falls silent, all eyes locking onto Tom as he walks toward the judge, holding up a second set of mortgage documents. The papers are fresh, new, but every detail, every signature, is wrong. He hands them to the judge, who flips through them, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. This document, Tom continues, his voice steady, is a second forged mortgage, signed in Eleanor's name, without her consent. This time, it's a loan agreement, again tied to the house. The signatures, the notary, completely fabricated. A murmur spreads through the room. The impact of the claim reverberates like a shockwave. Lydia's face pales, her eyes darting nervously from the documents to the judge and back to Tom. Mark's lips tighten into a thin line, his face flushing as though he can't believe this is happening. Judge Wallace slams the papers down onto the bench, his expression shifting from impassive to visibly angered. Another forgery? His voice cracks with frustration. This is absurd. How many more times are we going to see this pattern, Ms. Wilkins? Lydia's jaw tightens, and for a moment, it seems as though she might snap, but she quickly composes herself, sitting rigidly in her seat. Her eyes narrowed at Tom. Mark shifts uncomfortably beside her, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Your Honor, this is a mistake, Mark stammers, his voice shaky. This is all a misunderstanding. My sister, Lydia, has no idea what this document is. We were just trying to help Eleanor manage the property. There's no fraud here. But his words are hollow, thin with desperation. The audience can see it, the cracks in his performance. The damage is done. Tom's eyes flicker to the jury. He watches them closely, noting the looks of skepticism passing between them. They've been paying attention. They see the inconsistencies now. The weight of the evidence is sinking in, and they're not buying the story Mark and Lydia have tried to sell. The judge, his voice cold and stern, turns to Lydia. Ms. Wilkins, would you care to explain the discrepancies in these documents? Your signature appears, yet I'm not sure you were the one to put it there. Lydia opens her mouth, then closes it again, clearly struggling to find words. The sweat on her brow betrays her calm exterior. She takes a breath, as though preparing to launch into another lie, but the words stick in her throat. Lydia falters, her usual poise slipping with each passing second. She glances at Mark, seeking support, but even he can't help her now. The walls are closing in. Lydia's gaze darts nervously to Eleanor, sitting quietly in the witness box, her eyes steady and unflinching. Eleanor's composure has not wavered, and in that silence, she's more powerful than any of them. Lydia's defenses begin to crumble, and she squirms in her seat, her fingers twitching as if to grab hold of something, anything, to steady herself. I didn't, Lydia starts. But the words are feeble now, her voice trembling under the pressure. This wasn't supposed to... Before she can finish, Tom speaks again, cutting through her panic. The recordings, Your Honor, he says, his voice calm but lethal. We also have recordings that confirm Lydia's intent. They show her discussing the manipulation of Eleanor and the forging of these documents. The courtroom goes silent again, the full weight of Tom's words landing with brutal precision. The judge's gaze sharpens, and Lydia's face drains of color. She's trapped, her every attempt to hide the truth falling apart in front of everyone. Eleanor, her gaze steady, reaches into her bag, pulling out a small device. It's unassuming, but in her hands, it's proof. As she presses play, the room listens, the words coming from the speaker clear and damning. "I'll just forge it." Lydia's voice is heard clearly on the recording. "She'll never know, and we'll take care of everything. The house will finally be ours." A hush falls over the room, the weight of Lydia's own words hanging like a noose. The jury's eyes flick from the recording device to Lydia, and then to the judge. They can see the truth now. There's no denying it. Lydia's face twists in horror. She opens her mouth to protest. But the words die on her lips. There's nothing left to say. She's exposed. The gavel slams down with finality. The tension in the courtroom is thick, but it's different now. The game is over. And Eleanor can feel it, deep in her bones, the moment when everything shifts. The victory is within reach, and there's no going back for Mark and Lydia. The courthouse steps are still bustling with activity, the air thick with reporters and onlookers trying to catch a glimpse of the unfolding drama. Eleanor steps out of the building, her heart steady, but the world around her spinning in the aftermath of the latest revelations. She walks slowly, the heel of her shoes clicking against the stone, each step deliberate. She doesn't look back, doesn't acknowledge the reporters, but she feels their eyes on her. For once, they're not just staring at the weak, sick woman in a hospital bed. They're watching someone who's standing tall. The cool afternoon air bites at her skin, but Eleanor welcomes the chill. It's a stark contrast to the simmering heat inside her, the mix of adrenaline, anger, and a newfound sense of power coursing through her veins. As she reaches the corner of the courthouse, she sees him, Mark. He's standing there, just out of the shadows, watching her approach with a look she can't quite place. It's not anger, it's not sympathy either. It's something in between, something more like regret. Eleanor stops a few feet from him. Her expression is unreadable, but her eyes are sharp, cutting through him like a blade. "You chose her over me," Eleanor says, her voice low, controlled. The words land heavier than she intended. A lifetime of betrayal condensed into that one simple sentence. Mark flinches, his hand instinctively reaching for his jacket, as though he needs to hold onto something steady. His eyes flicker with conflict, but he doesn't meet her gaze. "Eleanor, No," she cuts him off, her voice firm. "Don't. You made your choice. You stood by her, not me, and now you're watching everything unravel, and it's your fault." For a moment, the silence stretches between them, thick with years of history, of wounds never healed, of choices made and unmade. Mark opens his mouth to speak, but the words don't come out. He looks like he wants to argue, wants to defend himself, but he doesn't. He's too far gone now, too deep in his own tangled lies. "I never meant for it to be like this," Mark finally mutters, his voice rough. "I didn't want to hurt you, Eleanor." Eleanor feels a sharp sting in her chest, a pang of something softer, a flicker of the woman she used to be, the woman who still wanted to believe in family. But that woman is gone now. All that's left is the one who has fought, who has been betrayed and manipulated, who has had enough. "You're a coward," she says, her voice hard now, the anger bleeding through. "You let her control you. You've been weak from the start, and now look at you. You've destroyed everything." Mark opens his mouth to respond, but a voice cuts through the tension like a knife. "Don't get weak now, Mark," Lydia's voice rings out from behind him, sharp and venomous. She strides toward them, her heels clicking with purpose. Her eyes flicker from Mark to Eleanor with barely disguised contempt. "You've already made your choice. Don't let her guilt trip you now." Mark looks at her, and for a brief moment, Eleanor sees the weight of his indecision flash across his face. But Lydia isn't giving him the chance to back out. She stands with all the confidence of someone who's been playing this game for years, who's never had to deal with the consequences of her actions. "Lydia," Mark says, his voice strained. "This isn't what I wanted." Lydia scoffs, crossing her arms over her chest. "Oh, please, you knew what you were doing." Don't get cold feet now. Eleanor feels a flicker of something cold settle in her chest. Cold feet. That's what Lydia thinks this is. That's how little she understands. Tom walks up then, his presence like a shadow casting over the scene. He's watched it all unfold, his eyes sharp as he takes in the quiet battle between the siblings. He places a hand gently on Eleanor's shoulder, his voice low and measured as he speaks to her. Expect fireworks tomorrow, he says quietly, his gaze flicking to Lydia and Mark. This is far from over. Eleanor nods, her jaw set, her hands trembling only slightly. She's not afraid. She's not backing down. You've been patient, Eleanor, Tom continues, but this will be the turning point. Tomorrow it all comes crashing down. She looks up at him, meeting his gaze, feeling the weight of everything shift in her chest. The truth is finally out. It's taken everything from her, but now she's got it all back. As Tom steps away, Sarah appears beside Eleanor, her arms open in quiet support. She pulls Eleanor into a hug, the warmth of it grounding her. You're stronger than them both, Sarah whispers in her ear. You've got this. Eleanor pulls back slightly, her heart full of something stronger than gratitude. She feels the weight of the fight still ahead, the battle that's not yet won. But with every piece of the truth revealed, with every crack in Lydia and Mark's armor, Eleanor knows she's not just surviving anymore, she's going to win. The courtroom feels suffocating today, the air heavy with anticipation as the trial draws to a close. The sunlight that filters through the high windows outside seems dim, as if the world beyond knows what's at stake here. Eleanor's life, her dignity, her future. Mark and Lydia sit opposite her, their postures rigid and defensive. They've been through the motions of their testimony, trying to maintain their control, but it's no longer enough. The cracks are widening, and they know it. Every word they've spoken has unraveled the facade they've so carefully constructed. The defense attorney, Mr. Sinclair, rises to make his closing statement. He moves slowly, deliberately, his eyes never once straying from Eleanor. His tone is smooth, calculated, as if he's done this 100 times before, spinning the truth into whatever shape serves him best. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Sinclair begins, his voice low and commanding. You've heard all the testimony, you've seen the evidence, and now, I must ask you to consider the character of the woman in the witness box. Eleanor Wilkins is not the innocent victim she's portrayed herself to be. She is a woman consumed by bitterness, vengeful, unwilling to forgive her own brother and sister for what they've done to help her. This is not a woman struggling with mental incapacity, but one who has manipulated the court, manipulated her family, and now seeks to destroy the people who once cared for her. The words sting like a slap in the face. Sinclair's voice drips with false sympathy, a tone of mock compassion as he paints Eleanor as a heartless, unforgiving old woman. She can feel the weight of his accusations, the venom in his words. It's the final attempt to turn the jury against her, to portray her as the villain in this story, when all she's ever done is fight for her own life, for her own survival. She doesn't flinch, she doesn't even blink. The game has been played, and now it's her turn to respond. Tom stands up, his tall frame casting a shadow across the courtroom. He doesn't need theatrics. He doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence is enough. His words will do the work. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Tom begins, his voice calm but unwavering. What you've just heard is the defense's final attempt to manipulate your perception. Eleanor Wilkins is not a vengeful old woman. She is a woman who has been wronged, a woman who has been betrayed by her own flesh and blood. He walks slowly to the jury box, his eyes never leaving the panel of jurors. He's speaking to them now, not to the court, not to Mark and Lydia. He's speaking directly to the ones who will decide Eleanor's fate. The facts here are clear. Over a period of months, Lydia and Mark Wilkins orchestrated a campaign of deceit, of manipulation, and of fraud. They used Eleanor's vulnerability to secure their own financial gain. We've shown you the forged documents. We've shown you the lies they told, the manipulation they employed to try to steal her home. We've shown you the debts Lydia was drowning in, debts that she and Mark were trying to erase at Eleanor's expense. Tom pauses, allowing the weight of his words to settle in. The room is still, the jury is listening. Eleanor, he continues, his voice softer now, is not here seeking vengeance. She is here seeking justice. She is here because she has fought for herself. She has fought for what is rightfully hers. And she has been brave enough to stand in this courtroom and tell you the truth, despite the betrayal of the people who should have loved and protected her. The silence in the room is thick, every ear straining to catch the next word. Tom steps back and gestures toward the monitors as the replay of Nurse Dana's testimony begins to play. Her words echo in the room, clear and resolute. I overheard Mark and Lydia discussing how they would have Eleanor sign away the house. It was cold, calculated. They didn't care about her. They just wanted what was theirs. The room shifts as the evidence continues to play out. Lydia's nervous glances, her faltering demeanor as the truth became too much to hide. Mark's growing defensiveness, his forced denial. All of it is being laid bare, piece by piece. Then, something extraordinary happens. Eleanor, whose strength has been tested more than anyone should endure, rises from the witness box. She stands on her own 2 feet, her back straight, her shoulders squared. There's a power in the movement, a quiet but undeniable strength. The court is silent, watching her. Even the judge's eyes flicker with a hint of surprise. Her legs are shaky, but she doesn't falter. She takes one step, then another. She is walking, not for anyone else, not for the jury or the audience, but for herself. The jury shifts, their eyes widening at the display of strength. The murmurs in the room are louder now, the atmosphere charged. They've been watching a woman broken down for so long, but now they see something different, something powerful. She makes her way back to her seat, her eyes never leaving Mark and Lydia. She doesn't need to say a word. Her silence is enough. The strength in her presence is enough. The judge listens intently, his expression hard to read. He's seen it all, the lies, the forgeries, the manipulation. But now, as Eleanor stands before him, it's clear that she's not the fragile woman they've tried to make her out to be. She's a survivor, and she's ready to win. The courtroom is packed, the air thick with anticipation. Reporters line the back, their cameras ready, but for once, the flashes are no longer blinding. The audience is waiting, holding their breath. Eleanor, sitting in the witness box, feels a calmness she never thought possible. The storm has raged for so long, but now it's over. It's in the judge's hands. Judge Wallace takes his seat at the bench, his expression unreadable. The silence in the room deepens, and for a moment, it feels as though the entire world is holding its breath. He scans the room, his gaze lingering on Lydia and Mark, their faces pinched with tension. Lydia, her lips tight, glances nervously at her brother. Mark looks straight ahead, his jaw clenched, hands gripping the arms of his chair. There's nothing left to do but wait. Finally, the judge clears his throat, the sound cutting through the oppressive silence. After careful review of all the evidence presented in this case, Judge Wallace begins, his voice low but firm, and after hearing testimony from both sides, I have reached a decision. Eleanor's heart pounds in her chest, but she forces herself to stay still. This is it. He glances down at the papers in front of him. It is the judgment of this court that the house in question, located at 21 Laurel Street, shall remain solely in the possession of Eleanor Wilkins. The attempts made by Lydia and Mark Wilkins to claim ownership of this property through fraudulent means are hereby rejected. The words fall like thunder, echoing in the courtroom. Eleanor's chest tightens, but she holds her ground. She doesn't allow herself to smile, not yet, not in this moment. But the relief is overwhelming, and for the first time in what feels like forever, the weight on her shoulders begins to lift. Lydia's face goes ashen. She opens her mouth as though to say something, but nothing comes out. Her eyes dart to Mark, but he doesn't meet her gaze. Instead, he stares ahead, his face a mask of disbelief. Furthermore, Judge Wallace continues, his voice growing firmer, Lydia Wilkins is hereby banned from making any further claims on the property. Any future attempts to file such claims will result in legal action. Lydia's breath hitches, and for a split second, her composure cracks. Her hands tremble as she grips the edge of the table. This was the final blow, the one that would make her realize there's no way out now. No more lies to hide behind. And, Judge Wallace adds, his eyes narrowing as he looks directly at Lydia, I am referring Lydia Wilkins for further investigation and possible criminal charges related to fraud. The room is silent for a moment, the weight of the judge's words settling over everyone like a heavy fog. Lydia's face twists with something between rage and humiliation. She doesn't speak, doesn't fight back. She just sits there, frozen, as though the life she'd so carefully built is crumbling beneath her feet. Mark, on the other hand, looks devastated. His shoulders slump, his face pale, his eyes distant. He stares down at his hands, as though he's just woken up from a nightmare, realizing everything he's done has led to this point. The fight, the manipulation, the betrayal, it was never worth it. And now, there's nothing left. Eleanor watches him from the corner of her eye. There's no satisfaction in his downfall, no joy, just an overwhelming sadness. The brother she once knew is gone. This man before her isn't the person she used to love, and maybe, in the end, she never really knew him at all. But she doesn't look away. She doesn't let herself. This is the final chapter of their story, and she's watching it unfold. The judge bangs his gavel, signaling the end of the proceedings. This court is adjourned. As the gavel echoes through the room, Eleanor stands slowly, her legs steady now, her body filled with a quiet strength. She's won. It's over. The house is hers, and with it, the future she thought she'd lost. Tom is beside her in an instant, his hand on her shoulder. You did it, he says softly, his voice filled with quiet pride. Eleanor nods, but there's no need for words. The battle is over, but the victory isn't just in the house. It's in everything she's reclaimed, the power, the truth, and the strength to stand up when it seemed impossible. As she walks out of the courtroom, the weight of her victory settles over her like a soft, comforting blanket. There are no reporters pushing in for pictures, no cameras flashing in her face. The world has been watching, but it's over now. And for the first time in what feels like forever, Eleanor feels like she can breathe. The news spreads quickly, and the ripple effects of the trial echo throughout the community. Lydia's indictment for fraud makes headlines. The story of her deceit and manipulation plastered across local papers. The charges are serious: criminal fraud, conspiracy to steal property, and more. It's a far cry from the polished image she had carefully curated. The facade of the well-off, respectable daughter, the one who always seemed to know exactly what to say and when. But now, with her actions exposed, that mask has shattered. Lydia's life, once built on lies, is crumbling. Her name is tarnished, and the weight of her betrayal drags her down further each day. No longer able to hide behind her wealth or charm, she becomes an object of ridicule, her every move scrutinized. The courtroom's verdict was only the beginning. Now she's left to face the consequences. Mark, on the other hand, retreats into himself. He isolates himself, a shadow of the man he once was. The weight of his guilt is too much to bear. Eleanor's victory isn't just about reclaiming the house, it's about reclaiming the dignity and trust he once had in her. A trust he willingly shattered for the promise of something else. Now, he walks the streets with his head down, ashamed of the role he played in this betrayal. The community watches, but no one sees him the same way. He is a man undone, caught between his loyalty to Lydia and the knowledge that he's lost his sister forever. But for Eleanor, the world has begun to shift in her favor. The town has rallied behind her, and the whispers that once spoke of her fragility are now filled with admiration. She is not just the victim of a cruel betrayal, she is a survivor, a fighter. The same people who once whispered in pity now speak of her with awe. It's a small gathering at Sarah's house, but it feels monumental. The room is filled with a quiet sense of victory, friends and neighbors who've watched Eleanor's journey, who've seen the strength she's carried through every setback, every moment of doubt. Sarah, ever the grounding force, bustles about, setting out plates of food and glasses of wine. We've all been through a lot, Eleanor, she says with a smile, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. You've been through more than most people could ever handle. But tonight, we celebrate you. Eleanor smiles, her heart full of gratitude. The warmth of the room, the soft laughter, the familiar faces surrounding her. This is what she fought for. Not just the house, but the sense of belonging, of home, that had been ripped from her all those years ago. Tom stands nearby, his usual calm demeanor never faltering, but there's a glimmer of pride in his eyes that he can't quite hide. "You did it, Eleanor," he says quietly, raising his glass to her. "You stood tall when it seemed impossible. I've never seen anyone fight with so much heart." Eleanor feels the sting of tears, but she doesn't let them fall. Instead, she takes a deep breath and raises her glass. "We did this together," she says, her voice steady, but the weight of her emotions is clear. She turns to Dana, who's standing by the door, a quiet smile on her face, as if she's been part of something far greater than a legal battle. "And you," Eleanor says, walking over to her. "I wouldn't have gotten through this without you. You saw the truth when no one else did." "Thank you." Dana's smile softens, and she nods. "You were always the one who was strong, Eleanor. I just helped you see it for yourself." As the evening stretches on, the laughter grows louder, the music fills the air, and the weight of the past seems to loosen its grip. Outside, the world is still, but for Eleanor, inside this room, there is nothing but peace. The media, in their relentless pursuit of stories, catch wind of the celebration. Their cameras, always hovering, now call her Mountain Matriarch, the title carrying weight and reverence. Eleanor, standing tall among her friends and family, is no longer just the victim. She is the embodiment of strength, a symbol of resilience. The press may have once preyed on her vulnerability, but now they can only marvel at the woman she has become. Later that evening, after the last guests have left and the house grows quiet again, Eleanor stands at the window, her gaze sweeping across the town. The house is hers, but more than that, she is hers again. The victory is hers, and nothing can take that from her now. The past is gone, the future is wide open, and Eleanor Wilkins is no longer a victim. She is the matriarch. Eleanor steps onto the front porch of the house she once thought she'd lost forever. The cool evening air brushes against her skin, the scent of jasmine and fresh earth filling her lungs. The house is still here, standing proud against the dimming sky, just as she remembers it. Every creak of the floorboards beneath her feet feels like a homecoming, as though the walls are welcoming her back, offering a quiet, patient embrace. She runs her hand along the rail, feeling the familiar grooves, the marks that have weathered time, just as she has. This is where she belonged, where she always belonged. It wasn't just the house she had been fighting for, it was this feeling of being anchored, of finally being home. The cane she once leaned on lies beside her on the wooden floor, not in her hand, not a crutch to keep her upright anymore. It's a quiet symbol of everything she's conquered, everything she's left behind. She no longer needs it to walk. She no longer needs it to stand tall. Sarah joins her on the porch, a glass of sweet tea in her hand. The ice cubes clinking softly as she sits beside Eleanor. The weight of the day's victory has yet to fully sink in, but there's a sense of peace in the air now, a calm that wasn't there before. The quiet hum of the evening wraps around them like a blanket. "How does it feel?" Sarah asks, her voice soft, but filled with genuine curiosity. She settles into the wicker chair beside Eleanor, her own glass of tea held loosely between her fingers. Eleanor looks out at the horizon, the last traces of sunlight fading behind the trees, leaving only the faint glow of dusk. She takes a slow sip of her tea, the sweetness cutting through the stillness, the sugar mingling with the weight of everything that has happened. "It feels like I've been running for so long," Eleanor says, her voice quiet but steady. "And now, for the first time in years, I can finally stop. I can sit. I can breathe." She pauses, her gaze far away, as if trying to capture the last remnants of something elusive. "I've been through hell, Sarah. The betrayals, the lies, losing so much. But here, now, I see it. I survived. I made it." She looks over at Sarah, meeting her eyes with a steady, sure gaze. "I lost a son," Eleanor continues, her voice low, but there's a quiet strength in it. "I lost everything I thought mattered, but in the end, I found my strength, and nothing, not even them, can take that from me now." Sarah doesn't respond at first, but her eyes soften as she takes a slow breath. "You've always been strong, Eleanor, even when you didn't know it." Eleanor smiles faintly, the years of heartache etched into her face. But now, there's a different kind of resilience there. It's the kind that's weathered storms and emerged unbroken. She feels it in every part of her, the strength, the quiet power of survival. The porch light flickers on as the evening deepens, its soft glow illuminating the space around them. The warmth from the light feels like a promise, a beacon in the growing darkness. It's just a light, a simple bulb in a fixture. But to Eleanor, it represents so much more. It represents home, hope, and the future she's finally claiming for herself. For a long time, she was lost in the shadows, haunted by what she couldn't control, by the lies and the betrayals that took so much from her. But now, as the porch light flickers gently in the night, she realizes that she's no longer defined by what was taken from her. She is defined by what she's reclaimed. The air grows cooler, and the night deepens. But Eleanor and Sarah sit in the glow of the porch light, their silence comfortable. No words are needed now. They have fought their own battles, and tonight, they rest in the peace of knowing that they've won. And as the stars begin to twinkle above them, Eleanor leans back in her chair, her heart full and her gaze unwavering. The journey ahead may not be easy, but for the first time in years, she's ready to face it, standing tall beneath the steady light of her home.